I want you to close your eyes for a second. I want to take you back to a very specific time and place. It's March 26, 1997. The location is Rancho Santa Fe, California. Now, if you've never been there, picture the ultimate California dream. It's an affluent, quiet suburb of San Diego. Winding roads, eucalyptus trees, privacy. I mean, it's the kind of place where privacy is the ultimate commodity.
It's horse country almost.
Yeah.
Very exclusive.
Exactly. And we are standing outside this sprawling Mediterranean-style mansion. It's 9,200 square feet, sitting on 3 acres, with a tennis court, a pool, the works.
The kind of place that screams success.
It is, and it's the kind of house that rents for $7,000 a month, and in this case, that rent was paid strictly in cash.
It sounds idyllic, doesn't it? Wealth, seclusion, peace. But on this particular Wednesday, the air isn't smelling of jasmine or, ocean breeze. It is unseasonably hot for March.
Right.
And as San Diego County Sheriff deputies approach the door, responding to an anonymous tip about a mass suicide, they are hit with something else entirely. A physical wall of heat and a pungent, overwhelming odor.
Ugh.
The unmistakable smell of decomposition.
And what they find inside isn't just a tragedy, it's a tableau that confused the world and instantly burned itself into pop culture history. They find 39 bodies.
But it's not the chaos you might expect from a crime scene. It isn't a massacre in the traditional sense. It's eerily peaceful.
So peaceful. They are lying neatly in bunk beds, and everyone is dressed identically. Black shirts, black sweatpants, and most infamously brand new black and white Nike Decades.
And there was a terrifying uniformity to their posture as well. Their faces and torsos were all covered by these identical purple square cloths. It was precise, it was ritualistic.
Yeah.
It looked less like a crime scene and more like a dormitory where everyone had simply gone to sleep at the exact same time. It was the end of a group that called themselves Heaven's Gate.
Today, we are unpacking Heaven's Gate. And look, I know what you're probably thinking. You're thinking of the sneakers. You're thinking of the comet. You're thinking of the punchlines from late-night TV in the 90s.
Of course. That's the surface level.
But the mission of this deep dive is to get past the caricature. We need to understand the belief system that made 39 intelligent people, brothers, sisters, professionals, believe that dying in a rented mansion was actually graduating.
That is the crucial distinction we have to make right at the start. I mean, if we want to understand this, we have to suspend our own logic and step into theirs. To them, this wasn't suicide.
No.
Suicide means giving up. Suicide means the end. To them, this was a departure. It was logistical. They weren't ending their lives. They were simply moving to a new location.
Exactly. We have a stack of sources here, primarily drawing from detailed records of the group's history, their internal tapes, and a lot of sociological studies that came out after. We aren't just looking at the tragedy, we're looking at a 22-year history of a group that managed to blend science fiction, Christianity, and New Age beliefs into what scholars call a UFO religion.
It's a fascinating, if terrifying, synthesis. You have biblical prophecy colliding with Star Trek. You have the asceticism of a monk colliding with the technological optimism of the space age.
So the big question we need to answer today is this. How does a music teacher and a nurse convince dozens of people, including a successful businessman and the brother of a Star Trek actress, of all people, to leave their entire lives behind for a spaceship trailing a comet?
To answer that, we can't start in the mansion. We have to go way back to 1972, to a chance meeting that sparked the whole thing. We need to look at the origins of the two.
Let's meet the leaders. First, we have Marshall Applewhite. In the group, he becomes known as Dew. But before all that, he's the son of a Presbyterian minister. A very straight-laced background.
Yeah, and a former soldier, and he was actually the music director at the University of St. Thomas in Houston.
So on the surface, he seems successful. He has this respectable career.
Absolutely. But by the early 70s, Applewhite is a man in crisis. I mean, his life is unraveling. He suffered serious professional setbacks. He was dismissed from his university role over an alleged relationship with a male student.
And you have to remember the context. This is Texas in the early 1970s. That is a career-ending scandal.
Completely. Yeah. And on top of that, his wife has left him. He's dealing with severe depression and exploring questions of his own sexuality. He is untethered.
And when you are untethered, you are looking for something to hold on to. Enter Bonnie Nettles. She becomes Ty.
Right. And she's a 44-year-old nurse, married, but she's deeply into the esoteric. She's interested in theosophy, biblical prophecy, and she even believes she's channeling a 19th century monk named Brother Francis.
She's a seeker. And we should pause on theosophy for a moment because it really provides the bedrock for what comes later.
It does.
Yeah.
Theosophy is a movement that started in the late 19th century, this whole idea of ascended masters and hidden wisdom from ancient civilizations, beings from other planets. It's all in there.
So Nettles was writing astrology columns, she was holding seances, she was looking for connection to something higher.
And the way they meet is arguably the most critical moment in the history of this movement. The sources vary slightly. Applewhite claimed he was visiting a sick friend in the hospital where she worked.
Right, but some researchers suggest he might have been a patient himself, seeking treatment for his mental health struggles.
Regardless of why he was there, they meet. And for Applewhite, it's instantaneous, a click. He feels like he's known her in a past life. It fills that void we just talked about.
It's a lifeline.
But Nettles takes it a step further. She tells him that extraterrestrials actually foretold their meeting.
Wow. That is a heavy thing to drop on someone you just met. But for Applewhite, in that state of mind, it must have been exactly what he needed to hear.
It validated everything he was feeling. This is the catalyst. Sociologists sometimes refer to this dynamic as folie à deux, or the madness of two.
A shared psychosis.
Exactly. You have two people who feel alienated from the world for different reasons. Applewhite due to his personal failures and identity crisis, Nettles due to her spiritual yearnings. They form a feedback loop. They validate each other's delusions.
So they decide to leave their lives behind, just like that. Applewhite's career, Nettles' family, her husband, her kids, gone. They just hit the road.
It's the ultimate spiritual road trip. They are driving across the country, camping, and building this library of influences. And if you look at their reading list, it's a roadmap to the tragedy. They're reading St. Francis of Assisi, Helena Blavatsky's Theosophy.
All the spiritual stuff. But then they're also reading Robert Heinlein and Arthur C. Clarke.
That combination is key. They are blending religious asceticism, the idea of denying the body to purify the soul, which comes from St. Francis, with hard science fiction. They aren't just looking for God. They were looking for advanced biology. They start to view the Bible through the lens of sci-fi.
Which is how they get to their next big conclusion. By June of 1974, they come to a massive conclusion about themselves.
A huge one. They decide they aren't just seekers. They are the two witnesses mentioned in the book of Revelation in the Bible.
So they go from being two drifters to being central figures in the apocalypse. That's a promotion.
A massive elevation of status. The two witnesses in Revelation are prophesied to be killed in the streets, resurrected after 3.5 days, and then taken up to heaven in a cloud.
And they interpreted this literally.
Literally, but with their own twist. The cloud was a UFO.
Of course it was. So they believed they possessed minds that were literally a higher level than normal humans. They weren't just smarter, they were, in their view, a different species in the making.
Exactly. And they believed they would eventually undergo what they called a demonstration. They would be assassinated, resurrected, and then transported to a spaceship. This demonstration became the core promise they offered to followers. Follow us, and you can come too.
But the road to the spaceship had some very real-world bumps. We have to mention the jail time.
Right. It's hard to run a cosmic mission without funding. They were arrested for credit card fraud because they were using a follower's card without permission.
And Applewhite was caught with a rental car he'd technically stolen, or as they put it, forgotten to return months earlier, so he ends up in jail.
He does. He spends 6 months in a jail in Missouri. And interestingly, sources say this separation was crucial. While he's in jail, without Nettles there to talk to, he starts writing.
He refines the theology.
That's it. Being separated from Nettles forced him to codify their shared beliefs into a structured doctrine. It had to be written down, organized. When he emerged from jail, they weren't just a couple of people with a vague idea. They had a manifesto.
Which brings us to what that doctrine actually was. We call it a UFO religion, but let's unpack that. Scholars note that they mixed Christian millenarianism, that obsession with the end times, with ufology. They were heavily influenced by the ancient astronaut hypothesis.
This was the era of Chariots of the Gods.
Yeah.
The book was a massive bestseller.
Right, everyone was talking about it.
The idea that aliens planted humanity on Earth was permeating pop culture. Heaven's Gate took that and ran with it. They believed aliens planted the seeds of humanity millions of years ago.
But here is the hook. The goal of life wasn't to be a good person in the traditional sense. The goal was to graduate.
Graduate, that implies school.
Exactly. They viewed Earth as a classroom. a cosmic classroom, and the only passing grade was to evolve from the human evolutionary level to the next level, or their full term was the evolutionary level above human. And the next level wasn't some floaty, cloud-based heaven. It was physical. It was literal.
Yes, this is so important to their worldview. They describe the next level as a corporeal place in the universe. In this place, beings live in bliss. They don't eat, they don't die, and importantly, they don't have sex. They are androgynous.
And how do they eat?
They absorb pure sunlight for nourishment. It's a very sterile sci-fi version of paradise. It's clinical. It's not about love and family. It's about efficient, pure existence.
And to get there, you have to realize something very specific about yourself. You have to realize that you aren't your body. They use very specific language for this. Your body is just a container.
Or a vehicle. That was the word they used constantly.
Right, a vehicle.
And that linguistic shift is a classic technique in high-control groups.
Yeah.
If you change the language, you change the thinking. If your body is just a car you're driving, then abandoning it isn't death. It's just getting out of the car.
It's just leaving the vehicle behind. So
Yeah.
why are we all stuck here in our vehicles?
Well, they believe that humans were trapped here, identifying with their vehicles, because of the Luciferians.
Luciferians, now we have a villain.
Every good story needs an antagonist. The Luciferians were evil space aliens. They believe these evil aliens pretend to be God, that they use holograms to fake miracles.
So like the burning bush, the parting of the Red Sea, that's all just alien tech.
Exactly. All just advanced technology used to deceive humanity. And they believe these Luciferians created Earth's religions to keep humans distracted and trapped in their mammalian bodies, focused on sex and money and family.
So into Heaven's Gate, Christianity, Judaism, all organized religions were actually tools of the enemy designed to keep you from graduating.
Precisely. It's a convenient way to isolate your followers from their past beliefs. Everything you learned before is a hologram trap.
Later on, they added another layer to this, the walk-in theory. What was that about?
This came a bit later in their history. Applewhite and Nettles claimed they were walk-ins. This is a concept where a high-level soul, a soul from the next level, takes over an adult human body, essentially swapping places with the original soul.
So it's like a cosmic carjacking.
In a way, yeah.
Mm.
This allowed them to wipe the slate clean of their past human histories. Applewhite isn't the disgraced professor anymore. He's a cosmic entity driving the professor's car. Bonnie Nettles isn't a nurse who left her family. She's an ancient being inhabiting that body for a mission.
And Applewhite took it even further, right? He connected himself to Jesus.
He did. He taught that Jesus was a vehicle that had been taken over by a next-level mind 2,000 years ago. Applewhite claimed he was inhabited by that same mind.
Wow.
So in his view, he wasn't just a prophet. He was the successor to Jesus. He was the present representative of Christ on earth. That's a direct quote from their materials.
Okay, so they have the leaders, they have the doctrine. Now they need the crew. In 1975, they start recruiting, and they do it with a bang.
The Waldport, Oregon meeting in 1975 is legendary in cult studies. They held a meeting at a motel, preached this message of leaving the world behind for a trip on a UFO, and the response was shocking. About 20 people sold their possessions, said goodbye to their families, and just vanished with them.
It made the CBS Evening News. Walter Cronkite was reporting on it. A score of persons have disappeared. It became a national mystery. The UFO cult.
That media attention was a double-edged sword. It brought them notoriety, but it also brought heat. It drove them underground. For the next decade, the group became nomadic. They lived in tents, slept in sleeping bags, camped in national forests.
It wasn't glamorous.
Not at all. It was a grueling, unglamorous existence. They were begging for money. They were constantly on the move to avoid being tracked by families or authorities.
And this is where the structure of the crew really formed. They started changing their names to detach from their old identities.
Right. They adopted three-letter names, usually ending in Odi, like Rakoti or Janoti. The suffix stood for children of the next level, and they began what they called the process.
The process.
This was the method of shedding all human attachment.
Okay.
It was the curriculum of the classroom. No family contact, no friends, no sexuality, no jobs, no money of your own.
That sounds like a boot camp for the soul.
It was a roving monastery. By 1976, they actually stopped recruiting. They closed the doors and focused on purifying the people they had. They were trying to scrub away their humanity to become compatible with the next level.
And the rules were intense.
Incredibly rigid. They had a system of check-in partners. You were paired with someone, and you had to report your thoughts, your actions, your temptations to them every few minutes. No private thoughts. Is total control. No sex, no drugs, no individual expression.
I think it's easy for us to look at this and just say, who would join this? But you mentioned something earlier, this idea of Sheilaism. Can we touch on that? Because the people joining weren't just, drifters or losers.
Not at all. And that's a common misconception about groups like this.
Yeah.
They included former hippies, yes, but also people like John Craig, a former Republican ranch owner who had run for office in Colorado.
So a pillar of his community.
Absolutely. Sheilaism is a term sociologists use to describe the religious landscape of the 70s. It comes from a woman named Sheila, who was interviewed for a study, who said her religion was her own little voice, her own Sheilaism.
Right, I pick and choose what I believe.
Exactly. It represents the trend where people stopped trusting institutions. The government, after Vietnam and Watergate, organized religion and started mixing and matching beliefs. Applewhite and Nettles offered a very specific synthesis. We have the science of UFOs, we have the authority of the Bible, and we have a practical path.
A complete package.
For a certain type of seeker, it was the complete package. It appealed to people who wanted answers that felt modern, but also ancient and spiritual.
So they are wandering the wilderness, literally and metaphorically, for about a decade. But then something happens in 1985 that shakes the foundation of the group.
This is the turning point. Bonnie Nettles' tidies of liver cancer.
Now wait, the doctrine was that they were going to be picked up by a UFO alive. They were supposed to physically board the ship. Their bodies were supposed to ascend.
The demonstration required a body.
But one of the two leaders just died a very human death in a hospital bed. That should have broken the spell, right? Logically, it's over.
Logically, yes. It refuted their core prophecy. But in high-control groups, failed prophecy often leads to entrenchment, not abandonment. The cognitive dissonance is too painful to admit you've wasted 10 years of your life, so you double down.
So Applewhite had to pivot. He was devastated. He had lost his partner, his older member, as he called her. So he revised the theology.
A major revision.
How do you revise "we are leaving physically" when the leader is dead?
He decided that Ty hadn't just died. She had left her vehicle. She had gone ahead to the next level to prepare the way. She was now working from the spaceship. This changed everything.
It meant you didn't need the body to graduate.
That's the critical shift. Consciousness could now be transferred to a new next-level body upon death.
I see. So leaving the body became viewed as exiting the vehicle. This is the seed of the mass suicide. It decouples salvation from physical survival.
Exactly. Before 1985, death was a failure. It meant you didn't overcome your human weaknesses. After 1985, death became a valid and eventually the only method of travel.
Let's fast forward to the 90s. The group resurfaces. And they aren't begging in the streets anymore. They've reinvented themselves. They're living in San Diego, and they're running a business.
A legitimate business called Higher Source. They were doing professional website development. And remember, this is the early 90s, the dawn of the World Wide Web.
A brand new frontier.
And these members were tech-savvy. Paul Virilio, a cultural theorist, actually called them a cybersect. They were living heavily online, using Usenet groups and their new website to recruit. They were using the very newest technology to spread these ancient futuristic ideas.
And they were living in luxury. In October 1996, they rent this massive mansion in Rancho Santa Fe. They call it the Monastery. But inside, it wasn't a party house.
Far from it. It was a regimented communal existence. Everything was shared. They had extremely strict protocols. For instance, they practiced standard for leaving the home. Any member leaving the house had to carry a $5 bill in quarters.
That specific detail, the money comes back later. Why quarters?
For payphones. This was pre-cell phone ubiquity. The $5 was to cover vagrancy laws, so if a cop stopped them, they couldn't be arrested for having no visible means of support.
It shows how pragmatic they were.
It does. It highlights the strange duality of their existence. They were planning for space travel, but they were worried about getting a ticket for loitering.
And then there's the preparation that went much further. We have to talk about the castration.
We do. It's uncomfortable, but it speaks to the level of commitment and the direction Applewhite was taking the group. 8 of the men, including Applewhite himself, voluntarily underwent surgical castration.
They did it themselves.
Initially, they tried to do it in-house with a member who was a nurse, but it was almost fatal. It was a disaster. After that, they went to actual hospitals in Mexico to have the procedure done professionally.
Why? I mean, was it just to stop sexual urges?
It was about maintaining the ascetic lifestyle, but more than that, it was about preemptively changing their bodies to match the next level. Remember, the next level, there is no gender. There is no sex. They are androgynous beings.
So they were trying to turn their bodies into the genderless vehicles they believed they would inhabit in space.
Exactly. They were trying to become the aliens while still on Earth. They wanted to remove any biological distraction, any hormonal urge that tied them to the mammalian level.
And they even bought alien abduction insurance. I mean, that sounds like a joke.
It sounds like a joke, but they did. A London brokerage firm, of all places, sold them a policy covering up to 50 members. It paid out $1 million per person for abduction, impregnation, or death by aliens. It's bizarre. But again, it shows they were trying to operate within the systems of this world insurance, web design, renting mansions, while preparing to leave it entirely.
So they are in the mansion, they are prepped, they are purified, they were just waiting for a ride. And in 1997, they get a signal. Comet Hale-Bopp.
One of the brightest comets of the 20th century.
Yeah.
It was visible to the naked eye for months. A huge celestial event. But for Heaven's Gate, it wasn't just a comet. There was rumor circulating, and this is where things accelerate.
Charted by an amateur astronomer, right?
Yeah, a man named Chuck Schrammick. And it was amplified by Art Bell on his hugely popular late-night radio show, Coast to Coast AM.
Coast to Coast was huge back then. It was the hub for conspiracy theories, UFOs, the paranormal. Millions of people listened.
Exactly. And the rumor was that there was a companion object trailing the comet, a Saturn-like object. Scientists and NASA quickly debunked it, said it was likely a background star or a glitch in the imaging software.
But Heaven's Gate didn't see it that way.
No. They interpreted this object as the UFO, the mothership. It was coming to pick them up.
The bus was finally arriving.
Yes. They believed Ty was coming back for the crew, piloting the ship that was hidden in the comet's tail. Their website updated with a flashing red alert that said, Hale-Bopp brings closure to Heaven's Gate. They called their time on Earth 22 years of classroom, and school was finally out.
Applewhite taped a video around this time, Dew's final exit. It's chilling to watch.
It is. Filmed around March 19th or 20th. He sits in a garden chair, looking gaunt, but speaking very calmly, very matter-of-factly. He declares it is time to evacuate this Earth.
And this is where we have to re-emphasize their mindset. He says it so clearly, they didn't view it as suicide.
Not at all. He called suicide the S word and said it was foolish. To them, suicide was staying on Earth, being left behind when the ship came. That was the real death. What they were doing was a willful exit.
They used Star Trek terminology. They were the away team.
Precisely. On the show, the away team beams down to a planet for a mission. When the mission is over, they get beamed back up to the Enterprise.
And their mission on planet Earth was over.
It was time to return to the ship.
So let's walk through the event itself. March 1997. It happens over 3 days, not all at once.
It was a staggered exit, deliberate. They did it in waves. 15 people on the first day, March 22nd, then 15 on the next, and then the final 9, including Applewhite, on the 24th. This wasn't a chaotic frenzy. It was a procedure.
What was the methodology, the recipe, as they called it?
The recipe was phenobarbital, a potent anti-seizure medication that acts as a sedative mixed with applesauce or pudding to make it palatable.
And then vodka.
Washed it down with vodka to accelerate the effect of the barbiturate on the central nervous system. Then, once they fell unconscious, plastic bags were secured over their heads to induce asphyxiation. It was designed to be certain.
And the cleanup, the living members cleaned up the dead, that part is so hard to comprehend.
Yes, the members of the next wave would tidy up the vehicles of those who had just departed. They removed the plastic bags, they draped the purple cloth over the faces and torsos, they posed them neatly in bed. It was an act of service to their fellow travelers.
Until the last ones.
The final 2 members who died were found with bags still on their heads because there was no one left to remove them.
Let's talk about the uniform. The black shirts, the sweatpants, the armbands reading Heaven's Gateway Team, and the shoes. The Nike decades. Why those specific shoes?
A lot of people look for deep symbolism there, but the reality is mundane. A former member confirmed it. They chose them simply because the group got a good deal on the shoes. They needed 39 pairs of the same shoe, and they found a bulk buyer.
There is a dark irony there, though. The Nike slogan, "Just Do It," and Applewhite's nickname was Do.
The irony is inescapable, but it was almost certainly coincidental. It just speaks to how they utilize consumer culture, Nike's, rented mansions, websites, to facilitate their rejection of that very culture.
And the pockets. They all had something in their pockets.
Each member was found with that $5 bill and 3/4.
The leaving the house money.
Exactly. Their standard operating procedure. They were leaving the home for the last time. One former member claimed this was a humorous reference to a Mark Twain story about the cost of writing a comet tale. But that quote has never been verified. It's more likely just protocol. They were prepared for travel wherever they were going.
The discovery. How did the world find out about this? It wasn't the police just stumbling upon it.
No, it was planned. The group sent packages to former members and media outlets, including the documentarian Louis Theroux, who had previously contacted them, right before the end.
And one of those packages went to a man named Rio D'Angelo.
Right. D'Angelo was a member who had left the group weeks prior, but at Applewhite's instruction. He was chosen to stay behind to maintain the website and handle their legacy. He received a package with the final exit video and a letter.
What did the letter say?
The letter said, "We have exited our vehicles just as we entered them."
D'Angelo goes to the house.
He went with his boss. He used his key. He found the bodies. He confirmed what had happened. He left and then called the police anonymously.
The aftermath. The media frenzy was instantaneous. I mean, I remember it vividly.
It was a global story overnight. And the discovery of the bodies coincided with the comet's peak visibility in the night sky. You could literally walk outside, look up at Hale-Bopp, and think about what had just happened.
Alan Hale, the co-discoverer of the comet, held a press conference. He was distraught.
He was. He almost seemed to take it personally. He bemoaned the scientific illiteracy and the cult's delusion, saying that if they had just called him, he could have explained there was nothing behind the comet. A really sad moment.
And pop culture jumped on it. Saturday Night Live had a parody sketch within days. There was a fake commercial parody for kids, worn by level-headed Christians.
We laughed because it was too weird to process. It became a kind of cultural shorthand for crazy cult.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a joke. There were copycats. Yes. A 58-year-old man in California committed a copycat suicide days later. And two former members, Wayne Cook and Chuck Humphreys, attempted suicide together in a hotel room in May 1997. Humphrey survived initially but killed himself in February 1998. He was found with a $5 bill and quarters.
So the belief was still that powerful for him.
He believed he had missed the ship and was trying to catch up.
And the group's presence? It's not entirely gone. The website is still up.
It is, frozen in time, with that 1997-era web design. It is maintained by two former members, Mark and Sarah King, who wrote Hilo Foundation, the evolutionary level above human.
And they protect the IP aggressively.
Very aggressively. They threatened rapper Lil Uzi Vert with legal action for using their logo and imagery for an album cover. They see themselves as caretakers of the group's information.
So let's wrap this up. We've gone from a hospital meeting between two alienated people to a mansion full of purple-shrouded vehicles. It's a 22-year journey into a completely alternate reality.
And it reflects the power of belief. These weren't stupid people. They called themselves learners. They were seekers. And they found a system that, to them, was completely logical. It was an intricate science fiction theology that explained everything.
Here's a final thought for you to chew on. The group believed they were graduating. To this day, the Tila Foundation maintains the website, answering emails as if the away team is simply gone, not dead. If you visit that site, frozen in its 1997 design, are you looking at a digital graveyard or, in their eyes, a forwarding address?
That is the question, and it's one we probably can't answer.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive.
Thank you.